Welcome back, Brashonomics. Ben Brashon, and talking a lot about this cause and effect. People make decisions in a silo. They have this tunnel vision. And Dennis Gibb is back with us. And Dennis, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dennis, you have grown your business pretty substantially over the last 20 years. And I think that in talking to you, you have got to be more in tune with the things going on from an investment standpoint than probably anybody I've ever met. And, even just before we...
That's amazing for a person of limited intelligence, but thank you.
Yeah, well, that you regurgitate information extremely well.
It is one of my skills.
But, we were just talking about gas prices and just current gas prices. It's in the news, and it kind of hits home in that everybody says, oh, gas prices are going high. It's going to cost me more to go to work. But there is so much more than just that piece of it.
Yes, there certainly is. The price of gasoline is an extremely complex parameter, and it has a lot of different inputs. The first thing is everybody should understand what goes into a gallon of gasoline. 47% of a price of a gallon of gasoline is the cost of oil. 23% is federal and state taxes. 18% is refining costs, which is largely energy, because they're burning natural gas and oil to fire those refineries up in Ferndale and Anacortes. And then 12% is distribution and marketing. It's moving oil from where it is to where it needs to be and the refined products out. So the minute oil prices go up, it's going to have a disproportional effect, a 2 cent to every cent rise, or a half a cent for every cent rise to the price of gasoline. Now, you got to think about this. People talk, well, why are oil costs? Okay. You have to talk about what's your input. If you're using West Texas Intermediate, which is oil, which is largely produced in the United States, right now that price, or this morning, was $104.85 a barrel. That's 44 gallons of oil. If you're talking about Brent oil, which comes from the North Sea in Europe, that oil was $122.65 this morning. And if you're talking about Asia Minas, which is produced in Indonesia and places like that, it's $134.76 a barrel for that same barrel. Now, give you a couple comparisons. Liquefied natural gas, which is natural gas which has been cooled to 270 degrees to turn into a liquid, delivered to China is being delivered at $20.36 a million BTUs. That's $175 a barrel. And the Chinese are buying all they can get of it in the world market. Gasoline, basically a wholesale gasoline on the markets this morning was $2.97. So add on the taxes, add on all the rest of the stuff, and you see how you get to $4. So
and $5
and $5. Now let's talk about oil as priced for other fluids that we use. So around here, you find these ubiquitous little stores around here called Starbucks. And you go in there and you buy a latte, and it's 8 ounces of coffee and stuff, and it costs you about $4. Folks, work it out. That's $32 a gallon. And it doesn't get you to the movies.
Although some people do think they need Starbucks in the morning just as bad as they need gas to get to work.
And probably they do. But the point is that when you complain about $4 a gallon gasoline, you're probably making other decisions which are less economic. I mean, you could have the same coffee at home, and you could have it for $1. Why do you go to Starbucks? Well, that's Howard Schultz's, dream. He's got everybody there. But he's basically selling you a fluid for $32 a gallon that you could buy anywhere else. The same is true with, don't even get me started on bottled water. I mean, the idea of what you're paying for a gallon of bottled water, which is probably right out of the tap anyway, is probably somewhere around the $50 a gallon. So based upon that, gasoline is not a bad price. Now, what makes people upset about it is we have created this environment that somebody has to be to blame. So the evil oil companies, the terrible speculators, that's not really the issue. Okay, and then there's the issue of Middle East. We're mortgaging ourselves to the Middle East. Of the 10 largest suppliers of oil in the United States, only 2 of them are in the Middle East. It's Saudi Arabia and Iraq. 4 of them are in Latin America: Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. Ecuador. I thought they produced bananas. All right. Two of them are in Africa.
I think it's Chile that does all the bananas, isn't that?
No, Chile does.
They got
that Chilean sea bass.
That's right.
That's what they do. They do sea basses and grapes that fly up here in the wintertime that don't taste like anything because there's no flavor to them. But anyway, I thought Ecuador is bananas. Anyway, and then there's two in Africa, Nigeria and Angola. The biggest exporter of oil in the United States is anybody? Canada. 2.3 million barrels a day from Canada, and that's getting larger. So we're really not being held up by the Middle East as much as we'd like to think we are. We're being held up by Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, Iraq, Ecuador, Angola, and we also import a fair amount of oil from Russia. So, people need to start realizing where this is coming from. And we're not really, one of the reasons oil prices stay high is that the cost of extracting oil in Canada, it costs about $50 a barrel to pull oil out of the ground on the oil sands in Alberta. It costs $1.65 in Saudi Arabia. So people go to Saudi Arabia because they can make a bigger profit, which is what companies exist for, is to make a profit. But we're burning more and more oil in Canada. The problem is that right now the world is producing about 82 million barrels of oil a day from all sources. We're consuming 86 million. So we can do this for a while. That's a little marginal difference. But if we don't start finding a lot more oil, given the increasing demand in China and India and the third world, we're going to have ourselves a problem where we're going to have not enough supply and too much demand. And when you have more demand than you have supply, prices go up. So, folks, $4 is cheap. It could be 10 or better later. It is in Europe. It's $9 a gallon in Europe right now. And it could get a lot higher here in the United States.
You talk about the fact that we're not being held hostage by some of these other, by the Middle East and Canada being a big exporter to us. We import from Canada. A lot of this hostage, it's more of being hostage to international demand. There's just more people buying it. As you just said, India didn't have a huge demand for gasoline 20, 30 years ago.
That's exactly right.
But now guess what? They also buy iPads. They also buy cars. They also, and all these things need energy.
Right. And China's the same way. You think about how many cars are being sold in China. And it's not just China. Think about Vietnam and think about Cambodia and Laos and you think about the countries in Africa. They're coming from a low base, but they're growing very rapidly. And it's not just auto consumption. Think about all the stuff that oil goes into. Chemicals. It goes into,
plastic.
People wear shoes that are made out of plastic. A lot of that's hydrocarbon. Either comes from natural gas or it comes from oil. So there's big demands. Now, if you're a country like Saudi Arabia, you have basically three things that you can make money off of. Okay. You can export camels, limited market.
Here we go.
Okay. Limited market. You can export sand. How many golf courses are there in the world? And you can export oil. So if China is willing to pay you $134 or more for your oil, you're going to sell it to the highest bidder. And it's just simple economics. These guys, they have nothing else to export.
And they have, and China has more, they really do have more money to buy this for their growing economy.
They actually have real money.
Right. We're just like, hey, we're going to borrow some money from China, buy the oil from you, and then we'll figure it out later. And that's kind of a scary thought.
It's a daisy chain, and it's what we've gotten ourselves into around the world. But from a standpoint,
what do you mean by a daisy chain?
A daisy chain is one thing that happens after a result of another. So we're borrowing money from the Chinese to finance ourselves so we can buy oil, which we bring in, and then we use it in our country to produce goods and services, which we buy things from the Chinese, which means more money goes there. So it just keeps going around a big circle, and that's what people talk about being a hostage. Now, if Saudi Arabia were to cut off 1.4 million barrels a day, which is what they export to us, it would have a dramatic effect on the United States economy. But we would probably, within a matter of months, pick that up by increased exports from Mexico, increased exports from Venezuela, increased exports from Canada. So it's a temporary effect. Now, what you don't want to have happen is, for example, some nut job in the Middle East to set off a nuclear weapon, and you get Saudi Arabia going down, you get Kuwait, you get Qatar, you get Iraq, you get all the rest of them going down there. There's not enough spare capacity in the world to pick that up. Also, oil and gas are getting harder and harder to find. So you're spending more money. We talk about a thing called EROI, energy received over energy input. It used to be that for every input of energy into the ground to produce oil, you got 40 energy units back out. Now it's down to 20.
And that has a lot probably to do with what deep sea drilling and where they're going out to get the oil.
Exactly. I mean, when you think about what these guys are doing in Brazil, they're out 15,000 foot deep water, and they're drilling 30,000 feet under the seabed. So it's 45,000 feet they're drilling. It's not even oil when it comes up. It's so hot that they have to recombine it. There's not the technology to produce that right now. But that's the length to which people are going.
6 miles. 6.5 miles.
It's as high as you fly in an airplane.
I mean, that's an incredible. I mean, the extraction of oil is incredible, and of course, at some levels, of course, it's going to go up in price.
Well, and then you get the negative publicity, like the BP blowout in the Gulf of Mexico, and everybody starts thinking the evil oil companies, they can't do this, and the environmentalists get all up in the air, and we shouldn't be burning oil. The problem is that the most efficient fluid for energy production in the world is gasoline. It produces more horsepower per gallon than in-air fuel. It's extremely dense. There's only one other area that's as dense, and that's nuclear fusion. But we can't replace it. We're going to be burning oil for a long time. So we need to make sure, even if we said no more, we're not going to do any more, it would take us 25 to 30 years to convert the economy to burn something else. So it's going to be with you a long time. The question is, can we get more oil? And the answer is yes. We can do a lot of different things to get oil.
We're here with Dennis Gibb, president of Sweetwater Investments. Dennis, we got a few minutes left, but so oil goes up. Do people realize how oil is tied to everything? I mean, when your groceries, your clothing, your transportation, of course, but everything is tied to this because everything gets shipped from one place to another. Nobody goes to the factory or to the farm to pick up their food.
Well, and and when you go to the grocery store and you get those cute little plastic bags, that's oil. When you open it, when you get one of those containers of food that nobody can open without a chainsaw, and you cut your hands up, that's oil.
Or kids' toys.
Yeah. You get your 4-year-old to open it. They're the only ones that know how to do it. Meanwhile, you're out there with a chainsaw trying to open the thing. But that's all oil related. Airplanes. I mean, think about, this is JP3, JP4 these guys are flying. This is a very light distillate that comes out of oil. There's a lot of oil input that goes in there for a gallon of that stuff that comes out. And I mean, you think about how much a 747 burns every hour it's in the air. I mean, it's an enormous amount of oil. And how many of them are flying around?
Oh, I mean, what they say, there's something like 100 planes landing a minute around the world.
Right. And so all of them are being powered by petroleum. So there's no possible way to get away from petroleum short term. So it's going to filter through the cost at various times. And people say, well, corporations shouldn't make any more profit. Well, I heard a story recently about a young girl who was in kindergarten. And in her kindergarten class, there's a young girl who is an heiress to a great fortune. And they were talking about bedtime. And the one girl said, when I get ready to go to bed at 10 o'clock every night, I go to my refrigerator in my room and I take out my favorite snack, which is fresh berries with yogurt drizzled with honey. And the other girl says, where does it come from? And the heiress said, I don't know. People want to forget about where this stuff comes from. Your job is dependent upon profits, which is dependent upon keeping costs under control, which would be able to sell a product at a price that you can make it. You can't ignore the fact that a major input of the entire economy is rising in supply and rising not because people are profligate, but because we're running out of it at a reasonable cost, and we're going to have to adjust ourselves upwards to make it happen. So, I mean, for the next 20 years, probably one of the great places to be is in resource plays around the world.
And so when people think about, those investments and whatnot, there must be various places you can be in order to kind of capitalize and play the other side of the coin from raising oil prices.
Well, you can if you think that oil is going to be displaced, you can buy Tesla Motors, produces an electric car.
Nice looking ones too.
Nice looking ones. And basically they're powered by cell phone batteries. Okay. If you want to,
they last about 15 minutes,
yeah, exactly.
And then they start beeping at you.
The problem is they keep dropping the calls as you drive. But you could also think about the other side of it. If you think the Canadians are going to do well with all their oil sands, there are companies up there that have oil sands. There are equipment companies that produce pipes and drill bits and this sort of thing that drill for oil. There are companies that do data where oil is. There are transport companies. I mean, I found out recently that these LNGs, there's tankers that haul the stuff around. There's only 100 of them in the world. And there's one company that owns 33 of them.
The big boats you're talking about.
These are 600-700 foot long boats that have these big domes in them with this liquefied natural gas in it at 270 degrees below zero. And they transport them from Angola or Australia to Japan or wherever. And when they get there, they hook the things up and the gas runs out and expands again and it becomes gas, natural gas. There's only 100 of those tankers in the world. There's one company that owns 33 of them. I mean, to me, that's a slam dunk.
Yeah, well, certainly, Dennis, thanks so much for joining us. And if you want to reach out to Dennis at Sweetwater Investments, find him on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Browsh&Onks. Dennis, I think you have one of the most intriguing minds of anybody I have talked to, with as much detail as you can find in what is going on around the world.
My mind's been called many things. It's the first time it's been called intriguing.
Well, when we come back, you might be thinking about where to invest, or you might be thinking about how to save a few bucks in order to just start investing. Ryan Leopold is going to talk a little bit about how your mortgage can be one of the biggest places for you to find some more money. My name's Ben Brashen. You're listening to Brashenomics.